Now, as is so often the case, wars, no matter where they start, have a tendency to spread out. And in this case, our little colonial war became much wider. Okay, it was 1779. Spain and Holland decided they want to get in on the action. Now, France had long been a traditional enemy of Britain, but Britain had often had very good relations with Holland, oftentimes not as good with Spain, but now you're seeing a number of nations in Europe basically siding against Britain. Now, Britain had no fear, concern, whatever, that the colonists were going to somehow mount ships and come across the Atlantic and take out England, but there was always that possibility that France, Spain, and Holland could launch some sort of an invasion. So this was an area of concern for them. They did have to really pay attention to this. 1780, Catherine the Great of Russia takes the lead in organizing what's called the Armed Neutrality, later just called the Armed Nullity. It lined up all of Europe's neutrals in passive hostility against England. They were neutral. They weren't going to side with France and Spain and the Americas and all that against England, but they were going to basically make sure England knew that they were not pleased with them. They knew that they want England to know that they were not on her side, and essentially this was just another strike against England. England really saw how much was being lined up against her at this time. However, England was not at some kind of point where they were just going to bow down by any stretch of the imagination. Now, America, even though we had kept the war going until 1778, we didn't really come out as a winner until France, Spain, and Holland joined in. Britain couldn't handle it all. Like I said, there was no chance that the colonials were going to come across the ocean. But back home was a different story. We didn't win our independence just on our own. It was a number of different events conspired against England to work out in our favor. So Britain, with the French now in the seas, decided it's a good time to evacuate Philadelphia. Okay, they were going to concentrate their forces. They were going to shorten their lines of communication and defense. They were going to, take more of a stand, shall we say. They were going to concentrate their forces in New York. And even though you do have General Washington, the indispensable man, attacks the British at Monmouth on a very, very hot day, literally this is a day in which you're going to see guys dropping dead from sunstroke. I mean, you think about it. Think about the Central Valley in summer. Think about the joy of heat. Now add to that the concept of humidity, which we don't really deal with in the Central Valley. Now add to that the layers of clothing the soldiers were wearing at the time. So you saw lots of guys dying of not just bullet wounds and things like that, but also of sunstroke. Even though there was an attack at Monmouth, the British did escape to New York. So they were able to more consolidate their forces there and get ready for the next phase.